The kitchen door slammed open before Mara had finished counting the silverware, and she already knew by the weight of the footsteps that it was her mother. Not her father. Her father's steps were heavier on the left side because of the old injury in his knee. Not her sister Celeste, whose heels always clicked in pairs, quick and deliberate, like she was practicing for a performance no one had asked her to give. This was her mother, Donna, and the particular rhythm of those footsteps told Mara everything she needed to know before a single word was spoken. Donna Arden walked fast when she was managing something. She walked faster when she was managing something she didn't want anyone else to notice. Mara set the last fork down and waited. "You're in here early," her mother said. The words came out smooth, wrapped in the ordinary tone that Donna used when she was pretending nothing was happening. "The table needed setting," Mara said. "I set it." A pause. Mara heard the soft sound of her mother's fingers brushing the back of one of the dining chairs, checking the placement. Mara had already checked it herself 3 times, running her fingertips along each edge of each plate to make sure the spacing was even. She knew what her mother was looking for. She knew her mother would not find a mistake. She made certain of that every single time. "Your father wants everyone seated by 6, Donna said. "I know, I heard him say it this morning." Another pause, longer this time. Mara could feel it. The pause had a texture to it, something held back, something circling. Her mother did this when she was deciding how much to say. "The Ridge Pack delegation is arriving tomorrow," Donna said finally. "I know that too. Celeste is going to need the morning room to prepare. I want you to stay to the East Wing until she's done." There it was, not a question, not even a request, just the gentle rerouting of Mara's existence into the corners of the house where she would not be visible. She had grown used to it, the way you grow used to a bruise you stop noticing because you have stopped pressing on it. It was still there, it still hurt if you pressed. She had simply learned not to press. "Of course," Mara said. Her mother left. The footsteps went down the hallway and faded, and Mara stood in the silence of the dining room with her hands resting on the back of a chair, listening to the house breathe around her. The clock on the mantel ticked. Somewhere above her, a window had been left open, and wind moved through it with a low, patient sound. She had been blind for 3 years. It had happened the way most things that change a life happen, without warning, and all at once. A fever that came on during the winter she was 16, the kind that burned so hot it frightened the doctors and left her parents standing in a hospital corridor while a man in a white coat told them something Mara had not been allowed to hear directly. She had heard it anyway. She had always been good at hearing things she was not supposed to hear. The word they used was permanent. Her mother had cried in the hallway. Her father had been silent for 3 days. Her sister had come into her hospital room and sat on the edge of the bed and not said anything at all, which Mara had found, oddly, to be the only honest response anyone had given her. And then the family had made a decision, not with Mara but around her, the way you route a road around a mountain, acknowledging that the thing exists while choosing not to address it directly. The decision was that it would be kept quiet, managed, contained to the family. The pack did not need to know. The neighbors did not need to know. The extended network of alliances and visiting delegations and social obligations that made up the daily life of a mid-ranked pack family, none of them needed to know. Mara was not asked her opinion on this. She had given it anyway once in the 2nd month after she came home, when she had walked into the sitting room and found her parents talking in the low, careful voices they used when they thought she wasn't close enough to hear. She had said from the doorway that hiding her was not the same as protecting her. The room had gone very quiet. Her father had told her gently that she didn't understand the social dynamics of their position, that an unmated Omega with a disability was a complicated thing in their world, that he was thinking of her future, that he was thinking of all of them. She had not raised it again. 3 years was a long time to stop pressing on a bruise. She navigated back to the kitchen by memory, 12 steps from the dining room chair to the doorway, a slight left to avoid the side table that had been moved 3 months ago and never moved back, then straight through into the warmth of the kitchen where the cook, a broad, quiet woman named Bet, was working at the stove. Bet had been with the family since before Mara was born. She was the only person in the house who had never adjusted the way she spoke to Mara after the illness. She still gave directions in the same blunt, practical way she always had. Turn left at the counter, hot pan on the right burner, don't touch that, it's wet. Mara found those directions more respectful than anything else anyone had said to her in 3 years. The potatoes need another 20 minutes, Bet said without turning around. You can sit if you want. Mara did not sit. She moved to the far end of the kitchen and stood at the window. She could feel the evening air coming through the gap at the bottom, carrying the smell of the garden and the faint green and earth scent of the trees at the edge of the property. She pressed her fingertips lightly to the windowsill and listened to the sounds of the estate settling into evening. Birds somewhere very far. The low hum of voices from her father's study on the second floor. She could hear Celeste on the stairs heading down. Celeste always took stairs faster than she should, light and reckless, the way she did everything. She was 22, 2 years older than Mara, and she moved through the world with the particular ease of someone who had never had to think carefully about a room before entering it. Mara did not resent her for that. She had tried resentment once. It was exhausting and it changed nothing, so she had set it down the way she had set down many things, quietly, without ceremony. What she felt instead, standing at the kitchen window while Celeste's footsteps faded toward the front of the house, was something harder to name. A hollow, pressing thing that lived just below her ribs and that she had gotten very skilled at ignoring. Dinner that evening was the way dinners at the Arden table always were structured, pleasant on the surface and carefully maintained. Her father Owen sat at the head of the table. Mara could map the whole room from his voice, from the direction the sound came and the slight echo off the tall ceiling. He spoke about the upcoming summit in the way he spoke about all important things, with authority and with the measured pace of a man who had decided what conclusion he was presenting before the sentence began. The Alpha Kings Summit. It was held every 4 years. Pack leaders, representatives, unmated omegas of eligible age, all gathered at the royal capital for a formal event that was equal parts political meeting and social ceremony. The Alpha King would be present, which meant in the calculus of Pack society that the next few days mattered enormously. Celeste will represent the family, her father said. He said it to the table generally. He did not look at Mara when he said it. He never looked at Mara when he said things like that. It was not cruelty exactly. It was more like the way you don't look at a door that you have decided to keep closed. If you look at it, you have to explain why it's closed. I've already chosen the dress, Celeste said. Her voice was bright, genuinely pleased. Mara didn't blame her for that either. Being chosen felt good. Mara remembered what that was like from when she was 16 before, when the world had still been something she could walk into without first counting the steps. You'll need a full presentation, their mother said. I'll have someone come in the morning to help with your hair. The conversation moved on, the way conversations move on when the important thing has already been decided, and everything that follows is just the details being arranged. Mara ate. She kept her movements precise and unhurried because she had learned that when you moved with precision, people forgot to watch you with that particular look, the slightly held breath look, the waiting for something to go wrong look. If you were careful enough, people stopped bracing for your mistakes and simply let you exist. She had gotten very good at existing quietly. After dinner, she helped Bet clear the table, because Bet let her without making it into a moment, and then she went to her room at the end of the eastern hallway and sat at the edge of her bed and listened to the house wind down around her. Her room was small and well organized. She had organized it herself over the first months after she came home from the hospital, moving things until every object was exactly where she needed it to be. Her books were stacked by the left wall, not that she could read them in the conventional sense anymore, but she knew where each one was, and sometimes she ran her fingers along the spines just to feel the familiar shapes of the letters. Her window faced east. She could tell by the way the morning air always came in slightly colder than the evening air, carrying the smell of dew and the sound of birds that rose with the sun. She lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling she could not see. Tomorrow the Ridge Pack delegation was arriving. The day after, her family would leave for the capital. Celeste would be dressed beautifully and presented at the summit. Her parents would network and negotiate and perform the careful social dance that kept their pack standing intact. And Mara would stay in the east wing of whatever accommodation they arranged, waiting for it to be over, exactly as she had waited for every other significant event of the last 3 years. She breathed in, breathed out. She was not angry. She told herself that frequently enough that it had started to feel true. What she felt was more like the sensation of standing behind a closed window watching rain, aware that something was happening on the other side of the glass, aware that she was not part of it, not violent about it, just aware. Sleep came slowly. When it did, she dreamed of walking through a building she had never been in, mapping it with her feet, finding every corner by sound. In the dream, she was very good at it. In the dream, no one tried to stop her. She woke before dawn. The house was still. The clock by her bed, a heavy thing with raised numbers she could read with her fingertip, told her it was just past 5. She lay still for a moment, listening. Then she got up. She dressed herself without help, as she always did, because she had never stopped doing things for herself and she did not intend to start. Her clothes were organized by feel, a system of small fabric tags she had sewn onto collars and cuffs herself, different shapes for different colors, so she would never walk into a room wearing something that clashed in ways she couldn't see. She made her own breakfast, moving through the kitchen in the deep quiet of early morning, the sounds of the house still sleeping wrapped around her like something gentle. She made tea and sat with it at the kitchen table and listened to the garden birds beginning their slow, rising argument with the morning. By 6, the rest of the house was beginning to stir. By 7, Celeste's preparation had begun in the morning room, and Mara had already retreated to the east wing without being asked. She sat in the small chair by her window. She held her tea, now cold, and she listened to the sounds of her family getting ready for a world that she was not supposed to enter. Below outside, a car arrived, then another, the Ridge-Pack delegation early. She could hear the front door opening, her father's voice in the formal register he used for guests, the polished and effortless performance of a man who knew exactly how to present his household. She heard everything. She was always hearing everything. That was the thing they had never considered when they decided to manage her, to contain her, to keep her quiet in the East Wing like something they weren't sure what to do with. They had assumed that losing her sight had made her smaller. They had never understood that it had made her sharper. She heard conversations through walls. She knew the weight of moods by the rhythm of footsteps. She could read a room by its silence alone. She was not diminished. She was paying attention, always paying attention. And she had been storing up everything she heard and felt and understood for 3 years, building a map of a world she was not allowed to walk through, waiting, though she would not have called it waiting because waiting implied hope, and she had not let herself hope for something to shift. Outside, the morning was fully arrived now, bright and sharp. She could feel the light on her face through the window even if she could not see it. The summit was in 2 days. She had no reason to think it would change anything. She had no reason to think it wouldn't. She sat with her cold tea and her careful, quiet knowledge of everything happening around her, and she listened, and she waited, and she told herself for the 1000th time in 3 years that this was enough. She did not entirely believe it. That was the thing she never said out loud, that underneath all the careful management, underneath the precision and the organization and the practiced ease with which she navigated a world she could no longer see, there was something stubborn and restless that refused to agree that the room at the end of the hallway was all she was meant for. She had never said it. She was thinking it very loudly this morning, though. She was thinking it with the particular sharpness that comes when something is about to break, and your body knows it before your mind does. The house moved around her, the morning moved, and Mara sat very still at the center of it, listening to everything, giving nothing away. She had gotten very good at that too. The announcement came at dinner, and it came the way most things came in the Arden household, wrapped in practicality, delivered casually, as though it had been decided long before anyone sat down. "We'll need extra hands at the Capitol," her father said, cutting into his meal without looking up. "The summit accommodation is larger than expected. Bet has agreed to travel with us to help manage the household arrangements." Mara was already listening carefully, the way she always did at the dinner table, her fork held still while she mapped the pauses between words. "And I was thinking," her mother added from the other end of the table, in the particularly measured voice she used when she had been thinking about something for quite some time and had finally decided to present it, that Mara could come as well. The table went quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of a pause between sentences. The different kind, the held kind, the kind where two people are exchanging something with their eyes that they are not saying with their mouths. Mara kept her face still. In what capacity, her father said, it was not quite a question. To help Bet, her mother said, with the arrangements, the household management side, she's good at it, Owen, you know she is. Another pause, this one had a different texture. Mara recognized it as the pause where her father was weighing something, not whether to agree, but how to agree in a way that felt like his own decision. She would stay to the service areas, he said, not a question either. Of course, her mother said. And just like that, Mara was coming to the Alpha King's summit, not as a guest, not as a family member, as the person who would make sure Bet didn't have to carry heavy trays alone. She should have felt something ugly about that. She expected to. Instead, what she felt was a very still, very quiet thing that she didn't examine too closely because she was afraid that if she looked at it directly it would turn out to be hope, and she had rules about hope. She ate her dinner, she said nothing. She listened to the conversation move on to other things. That night, alone in her room, she sat at the edge of her bed and did the mental work she always did before going somewhere new. She asked herself what she knew about the royal capital. She had been there once, when she was 12 and her father had business to attend to. She remembered almost nothing visual about it, which was fine because the visual parts no longer mattered to her. What she remembered was the sound of it, big, equi spaces with high ceilings, footsteps that carried differently than in smaller buildings, the particular way large crowds of wolves moved in formation, the sense of packed air and multiple simultaneous conversations happening at different distances. She could work with that. She began building her strategy the way she always did, quietly, alone, without telling anyone. She would count steps from the entry point to the service areas. She would memorize landmarks by touch and sound. She would identify anchor points, places she could return to when her orientation shifted. She had done this in every new space she had entered for 3 years. She was fast at it now, better than she had any right to be. She told herself it did not matter where they put her. Service areas were still inside the building. Inside the building was still closer to the world than she had been in 3 years. She did not let herself think beyond that. 2 days later, they drove to the capital. The journey took 4 hours. Mara sat in the back of the car between her packed bag and the window, and she spent the whole drive doing what she always did in transit, listening. The sounds of the road changed as they got further from home, smaller packed territories giving way to the wider infrastructure of the central lands, the hum of the road shifting from rougher surfaces to something smoother, the sounds of other vehicles multiplying around them as they got closer to the city. Her mother talked to Celeste about the presentation, what to say, who to speak to first, how to stand. Mara listened to all of it without comment. She stored everything. She could not have explained why she was storing information about a social event she was not attending. It was simply how her mind worked now. It collected everything and held it, a habit built over 3 years of having nothing but information to work with. They arrived in the early afternoon. The accommodation was large, she could tell by the way sound moved when they walked through the entrance. High ceilings, hard floors, multiple corridors branching from a central space. The kind of place that had been built to hold a lot of people and a lot of events simultaneously. She stood in the entrance hall with her bag in her hand and mapped it in under 30 seconds. 4 corridors, 2 sets of stairs, the kitchen and service areas to the left by the smell of cooking oil and warm water, the formal rooms to the right by the different quality of the air, cooler and less used. Her mother put a hand briefly on her shoulder and directed her toward the left. Mara went, she counted every step. The service quarters were at the back of the property, practical and plain, the kind of rooms that exist to support the house's functioning rather than to impress anyone. She was given a small room with a single bed, a window she could feel faced north by the coldness of the air coming through it, and a hook on the back of the door for her bag. She set her bag down, touched every surface, mapped the 12 by 10 space in her mind until she owned it, and then went to find Bet. Bet was already in the kitchen, organizing with the calm efficiency of someone who had worked in unfamiliar spaces all her life and had stopped being impressed by them. "Table to the left of the door if you want somewhere to sit," Bet said without preamble. "The stove is gas, not electric, so be careful with the left burner, it runs hot." "Thank you," Mara said. "There's a lot of food to manage. I could use help with the prep work tomorrow morning." "I'll be up by 5. "Good." Bet did not add anything to this. She did not soften it or explain it or wrap it in anything. She just went back to her organizing, and Mara went to the table on the left of the door and sat down, and the two of them occupied the kitchen together in the uncomplicated way they always had, which was one of the few things in Mara's life that she did not have to work to maintain. That evening, the formal guests began arriving. Mara was not in the formal areas. She was in the kitchen corridor, moving between the service spaces and the back hallways, learning the house by degrees, adding detail to the map she had started the moment she walked in the door. She moved with a tray when she needed a reason to be somewhere. She had learned early that a person carrying something was rarely questioned. People looked at the tray first, then the person behind it, and by then they had usually already decided the person was not interesting. She used that, she had been using it for years. By 9 in the evening, she had mapped the entire Eastern Service corridor, the main kitchen, the back stairs up to the second floor, and the narrow hallway that connected the service areas to the formal dining room through a side door. She had not gone into any of the formal rooms, she had not planned to. She was standing in the back hallway, listening to the sounds of the formal gathering on the other side of the wall, when she heard her sister's voice. Celeste was laughing at something. The laugh was genuine, not the performance laugh she used when she was networking. This was the real one, higher and less controlled. Someone must have said something that genuinely surprised her. Mara stood still and listened to the shape of the gathering through the wall. 20, maybe 25 people in the room, a mix of conversation and the particular kind of formal movement that happened when people were being watched and knew it. She thought about her sister standing in that room, being looked at, being counted among the eligible and the presented and the appropriate. She thought about what it felt like to know you were appropriate. Then she picked up her tray and went back to the kitchen and helped Bet with the washing up, and she didn't think about the formal room again until she was lying in bed that night in the dark. And in the dark she could not see, the dark was simply the dark, no different from the rest of her days, no more significant, staring at the ceiling. The summit formal events began tomorrow. She would be carrying trays and helping Bet. She told herself it was enough. She told herself she did not want more than that. She was getting less convincing, even to herself. The morning arrived cold and fast. She was in the kitchen before 5 as she had promised. Bet was already there, and together they moved through the preparation work with the rhythm of two people who had worked together long enough to not need to narrate it. Mara chopped vegetables by feel with the precision of long practice, organized dishes on trays, managed the timing of the warming plates. She knew these things. She had learned them over 3 years of insisting on being useful, because being useful was the one argument that was difficult to refuse. Around 8 the kitchen became busier. Other staff had arrived, people brought by other families or employed by the summit accommodation itself. The kitchen filled with unfamiliar voices, the kind of noise that made navigation harder. Mara adjusted, she always adjusted. By 10 in the morning she had been given a serving assignment. She was to carry refreshment trays to the side corridors where guests gathered between sessions, not the main hall, not the formal presentation areas, the corridors. She accepted without comment and went. The side corridor was long and narrower than she had expected, with a curved wall on the left side that created interesting acoustic effects. Sounds bounced at angles she had to recalibrate for. She made the adjustment within her first full lap of the corridor, remapping her mental layout. She moved carefully, measuring space between guests, giving herself room. The guests barely noticed her, which was exactly how her family had planned it. She was 4 hours into the day when Celeste found her. She knew Celeste's footsteps, of course, the quick paired click of her heels. She heard them coming from 20 feet away, and she had already adjusted the tray and her position before her sister stopped beside her. "You're doing well," Celeste said. She said it quietly, and Mara could hear something in her voice that was not quite guilt but was adjacent to it, the particular sound of a person who was aware that a situation was unfair but lacked the courage to say so directly. "So are you," Mara said. A pause. "He's here," Celeste said even more quietly. "The king, he arrived this morning. He's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone older. Someone who looked more like an authority figure and less like," she stopped. "Less like what?" "Less like someone who was actually paying attention," Celeste said, and then seemed startled by her own words, as though she had said more than she intended. "I should get back. Mother will notice if I'm gone too long." The footsteps moved away. Mara stood in the corridor with her tray and thought about what her sister had said. Less like someone who was actually paying attention. She filed it carefully. She didn't know why it snagged on something inside her. She moved on with her tray. 4 more hours, then she went back to the kitchen, then dinner preparation. Then the slow process of the evening winding down, the formal rooms emptying, the sounds of the house changing from gathering noise to settling noise. She ate in the service kitchen with Bet and 2 other staff members whose names she learned quickly. A young man called Cole who had a stutter he was clearly self-conscious about, and who relaxed when he realized Mara was simply listening without any particular expression, and a woman called Harriet who was older, efficient, and who laughed easily at things that happened in the kitchen without explaining to anyone else why she was laughing. Mara liked them both within the first 20 minutes. She was good at liking people quickly, in the specific way that came from paying close attention to how they moved through a space and what they did with their hands when no one was watching them. Cole carried things carefully, even when there was no need to be careful. Harriet hummed to herself between tasks. These were small things. They told her everything she needed to know. She went to bed that night with aching feet and a mind that would not quiet down. Tomorrow was the main summit day, the formal presentations, the events her family had traveled here for. She would be in the corridors, carrying things, staying to the sides. She lay in the dark with her eyes open and breathed slowly, and the stubborn, restless thing under her ribs pressed against her steadily, and she pressed back against it, and neither one of them gave way. 3 years, she thought. 3 years of giving way and stepping back and making herself smaller and staying to the east wing, and being careful and being managed, and being the thing the family navigated around. She was tired, not of the work, not of the blindness, which was simply the reality of her life now, in which she had made peace within the specific, honest way of someone who does not pretend something is fine, while also not pretending it is more than it is. She was tired of the smallness of the space she had been given. She was tired of being told, without words, that she did not count. She did not say any of this out loud. She never said any of it out loud. She closed her eyes, not that it changed anything, and breathed and waited for sleep, and told herself one more time that tomorrow she would do her job and stay to the corridors and not cause any trouble. She told herself this very firmly. She almost believed it. The summit's main day opened with the kind of organized noise that only large formal gatherings produce, multiple rooms running simultaneously, the low tide of conversation rising and falling, footsteps on stone floors, doors opening and closing with the precise, controlled rhythm of an event that has been planned down to the quarter hour. Mara was in the kitchen at 5:15, dressed and ready, the tray already in her hands before Bet had finished her first cup of tea. "You don't have to be so early," Bet said. "I know." Bet looked at her for a moment. Mara couldn't see the look, but she could hear the quality of the silence that followed it, which was a specific kind, the silence of someone choosing not to say something they feel strongly about. Bet had been choosing not to say things for 3 years. Mara suspected the list was long. "The main corridor assignments are on the board by the door," Bet said finally. "Cole will show you where to stand." Cole appeared at Mara's left shoulder so quietly that she almost missed him. "I've got it," he said to Bet, and then to Mara, slowly and carefully. "There's a board, with names and positions written on it. You're in the East Gallery corridor this morning. I can walk you." "Please," Mara said. She didn't correct his pace or his caution. He was being kind, and she had learned a long time ago that there was a difference between kindness that diminished and kindness that didn't, and Cole's was the second kind, the sort offered without any need to be acknowledged as offering. They walked together through the back hallways, Cole giving her quiet advance notice of any change in the floor level or direction. He didn't do it in the anxious way some people did, narrating everything she could already manage, but in a simple, practical way: step up here, corner to the right, and then going quiet again. By the time they reached the East Gallery corridor, she had decided she trusted him. The gallery corridor was wide, with a long wall to the left and an open archway on the right that she could feel by the change in air pressure and the way sound expanded through it. She mapped it in 60 seconds. Then she positioned herself at the midpoint where traffic would be heaviest and waited for the morning to begin. It came fast. By 8 the corridor was full. Guests moved through it in both directions, the particular structured flow of people who have places to be and times to be there. She moved with her tray, giving refreshments when asked, stepping aside when the crowd shifted, adjusting her position continuously without appearing to think about it. She had gotten very good at being precisely in the right place without drawing attention to how she knew where the right place was. She heard her family twice before noon. The first time was her father's voice, deep and carrying, speaking to someone she didn't recognize about trade agreements. He passed within 4 meters of her and did not speak to her, did not react to her presence in the corridor, moved through without breaking his sentence. She wasn't surprised. She had expected that. She told herself it didn't sting, and then spent approximately 4 seconds being honest with herself, and acknowledging that it did, a little, in the specific way of things that are too familiar to cause real surprise, but have not yet become familiar enough to cause nothing at all. The second time was her mother, coming down the gallery with 2 other women from what sounded like a neighboring pack. Her mother's voice was warm and social, the particular warmth of a person performing ease for an audience. She passed Mara at close range, close enough that the hem of her dress would have brushed the tray if Mara hadn't stepped aside without pause, without acknowledgement, without anything. Mara moved her tray, she kept her face entirely still, she breathed. The morning continued. Around 11, the energy in the corridor shifted. The organized flow became slightly less organized, the movements of the guests carrying a new quality, the anticipatory adjustment of a crowd that is responding to something coming. She heard it before she understood it, the way a change in the weather arrives as a change in sound and air before it arrives as anything visible. She tilted her head, listening. Footsteps, not the footsteps of the regular circulation of guests, different. A small group moving with a particular coordination, the kind of movement that had structure to it, people who moved in relation to each other in formation, some of them slightly ahead and some slightly behind a central point. The central point was where her attention went. She had grown very good at locating the center of a group by sound alone. The central set of footsteps was unhurried, that was the first thing. In a day full of people moving with the controlled urgency of individuals with appointments and impressions to manage, these footsteps were unhurried in a way that was clearly not indifference but something more like choice. The choice to move at your own pace because the pace of the day bent toward you, not the other way around. He was still 20 meters away when she became aware of him. She told herself she was imagining it. The awareness was too sharp for this distance, too specific. But her senses had sharpened considerably over 3 years, and she had learned to trust them even when they presented her with information she found inconvenient. He was tall from the way his voice traveled when he exchanged a brief word with someone nearby. The sound carried from above the average height of the corridor's guests. He was moving toward the eastern end of the gallery. She was standing at the midpoint. He would pass her. She adjusted her grip on the tray. She found her position at the wall, professional and unobtrusive, giving room for the group to move through. She did everything she was supposed to do exactly as she was supposed to do it, and waited for the group to pass. They did not pass cleanly. She did not know afterward exactly what caused it. A guest stepping back from a nearby conversation, perhaps, or a shift in the corridor's crowd density, or the particular problem that arises when you are mapping a space by sound and multiple sounds change simultaneously. Whatever the cause, the corridor moved in a way she had not anticipated, and she moved to adjust, and the direction she adjusted was the wrong direction. She did not fall. She was clear about that to herself later when she was recounting the moment. She did not fall. She stepped sharply to the left to regain her position and collided with something solid and warm and completely immovable. The tray tilted. She caught it with both hands before anything left it. That mattered to her afterward, the fact that she had caught the tray, because it meant her reflexes were working and her training was holding even in the moment of impact. What she had collided with caught her. An arm, she could feel it against her shoulder, steady and immediate, not grabbing, not gripping, simply present, a hand at her arm that stopped her from going further sideways. She righted herself. The tray settled. She straightened and stepped back, putting a precise distance between herself and the person she had walked into. "I'm sorry," she said, clean, professional, directed at the approximate origin of the arm. "Excuse me." A pause, a short one but with weight in it. "Are you hurt?" The voice was low, unhurried. The same unhurried quality she had heard in those footsteps 20 meters back. "No," she said, "I'm perfectly fine. I apologize for the disturbance." Another pause, different from the first. "You caught the tray before anything spilled," the voice said. It was an observation, not a compliment. The kind of thing someone says when they have noticed a thing and are noting it factually. "Yes," she said. "That was fast." She did not say anything to that. Around her, she was aware of the group that had been moving with him having adjusted. She could hear the subtle shift in their positions, the particular stillness of people who have stopped moving because the person they are moving with has stopped. The corridor's general traffic was adjusting too, giving space. and she understood with the particular clarity that came from being very good at reading a room that this was not ordinary. He was not ordinary, in the specific sense of not being an ordinary guest. She did not know who he was. She had not allowed herself to speculate, because speculation required looking up, and she could not look up in the way that meant anything. "Go carefully," he said. There was nothing patronizing in it. It had the same quality as Bet's kitchen directions, practical, delivered without performance, as though he was simply noting a condition of the space. "Thank you," she said, and she moved on. She moved down the corridor with her tray held steady and her steps precisely measured, and she did not pause or break her rhythm or give any outward sign of the thing that had happened inside her chest during those 30 seconds. She had gotten very good at giving no outward sign of internal things. It was a skill she had developed in the first months of blindness, when the world had been very loud and her own feelings very large, and the only thing she had had any control over was her own face. She went back to the kitchen at noon for the midday break. Bet was there, and Cole was there, and Harriet was there, and she sat at the table and drank water and allowed herself, very briefly, to examine the thing that had happened. An arm that had caught her without grabbing. A voice that had asked if she was hurt before it said anything else. An observation, not a compliment, factual. She had heard many voices in 3 years. She had learned to sort them into categories by the information they carried, voices that arranged themselves around her disability, careful, slightly raised, slightly slowed, performing patience, voices that ignored it entirely in a way that felt like deliberate performance, voices that didn't know and spoke to her in the ordinary manner of someone speaking to a stranger, which were her favorite kind. This voice had been none of those categories. It had been something else, something she did not have a label for. She drank her water. "You're very quiet," Harriet said from across the table. "I'm always quiet," Mara said. Harriet laughed the way she laughed at things in the kitchen, the easy, unguarded laugh of a person who does not require an explanation. "True enough," she said, and went back to her meal. Cole was looking at her. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it, the way you feel attention when it is focused in your direction. "Are you okay?" he said in his careful, steady way. "Yes," Mara said, "I am." She almost meant it. The afternoon assignment took her back to the eastern corridor. She went with her tray and her mapped route and her practiced invisibility, and the afternoon moved with the particular speed of a long day that has found its rhythm. Guests flowed and gathered and dispersed. Sessions ended, new ones began. She moved through all of it, hearing everything, noting everything, storing everything with the involuntary efficiency of a mind that had learned to rely entirely on its non-visual senses. She did not collide with anyone else. She did not hear that particular set of unhurried footsteps again, though she was aware, distantly, of listening for them in a way she did not examine too carefully. At 4 in the afternoon, Celeste found her again. "How are you doing?" her sister said, appearing at her right side, the quick click of heels giving her away from 10 meters back. "Well, and you?" "Nervous," Celeste said, with the honesty that came through in her voice when she was tired and had stopped managing her expressions. "There's a formal introduction this evening. Mother says I need to be presented to the senior pack representatives before the dinner." "You'll be fine," Mara said. She meant it. "I know." A pause, then in a smaller voice. I don't know how to say it, he's very present. Do you know what I mean? Some people walk into a room and they fill it and you can feel it." Mara said nothing. "The king," Celeste said as though clarifying. "I only saw him from a distance this morning. He came through the east gallery. He stopped." Another pause, strange and unexplained. "I don't know who he stopped for, but he stopped." Mara kept her face completely still. "You'll be fine this evening," she said again. Celeste squeezed her arm briefly, the way she used to do when they were children and one of them was frightened. Then the heels clicked away down the corridor, and Mara stood alone with her tray, and the afternoon continued. She did not say anything about the corridor to her sister. She did not say anything about it to anyone. It was a 30-second moment in a busy day, and she had been mapping it all afternoon, turning it over with the careful attention she gave to all important things, and she had come to this conclusion. He had not looked at her the way most people looked at her when they became aware she was blind. He had not changed his voice or his manner or his pace. He had simply asked if she was hurt, and noted that she had caught the tray, and told her to go carefully. He had spoken to her as though she was simply a person. She had been working hard for 3 years at not needing that to matter. She was finding tonight that it mattered anyway. She carried her tray through the remainder of the afternoon shift, and she did not let any of it show on her face, and she went back to the kitchen when the shift ended and helped Bet with the evening preparation, and she ate dinner with Cole and Harriet and said ordinary things about the day, and she went to bed at 10 in the small room with the north-facing window. And she lay in the dark that was simply the dark, exactly as it always was, no darker or lighter than any other night, and she thought about an unhurried voice asking before anything else if she was hurt. She thought about it for a long time. She did not sleep quickly. The second morning of the summit arrived with rain. Mara heard it before she was fully awake, the steady percussion of water on the north window, the change in the quality of the air that came through the gap at the bottom of the frame, the way the whole building seemed to absorb the sound of rain and hold it differently than it held silence. She dressed quickly. She had been up before 5 again without meaning to, not because of an alarm, but because her body had settled into the habit of early rising the way bodies settle into any routine that is repeated often enough. She made it to the kitchen before Bet, which was unusual, and she had the first kettle already heating when Bet came through the door and made the small sound that meant she was surprised. "Sleep well?" Bet asked. "Well enough." Bet made the sound that meant she didn't entirely believe this, but was not going to press. She began organizing the morning's preparation with her usual economy of movement. "Rain will keep more of them indoors today," she said. "Expect the corridors to be busier." "I'll adjust." The morning schedule had changed slightly because of the weather. Mara learned this when Cole came in at 6 with the updated assignments, reading them out in his careful, unhurried way. The outdoor areas had been moved inside. Several sessions had been consolidated. The East Gallery corridor, which had been a secondary circulation space yesterday, was now a primary one. She was assigned there again. She went with her tray and her map, and the rain coming down outside the tall windows, and the increased traffic moved around her in the predictable, unpredictable way of a crowd that has been given new parameters. She adjusted her positions continuously, refining them, her mental map of the corridor updating in real time as the day's population distributed itself differently from the previous days. She was good at this. She had always been good at spatial problems even when she had her full sight. Afterward, the skill had simply become essential rather than optional, and she had sharpened it the way you sharpen a tool you use every day. Around 9, she heard him. She was not looking for the sound. Or she told herself she was not looking for it, which was almost the same thing but with a slight dishonesty built into the middle. The truth was that she had been aware, in the peripheral way of something you are trying not to monitor but can't quite stop monitoring, of the absence of those particular footsteps since she had arrived in the corridor. And then they were there. The unhurried quality, the slight difference in weight distribution that spoke of height, and a physical ease that was not casual but settled. The small formation that moved with him, slightly ahead, slightly behind. She tracked the sound from the west end of the corridor. He had come in from the west today, and she knew with the same certainty she always had when she had located the center of something that he was moving toward her position. She kept herself still, she kept her tray level, she kept her face arranged in the professional neutrality she wore in the corridors. He stopped. She knew he had stopped because the footsteps stopped, and the formation stopped with them, and the particular quality of the air changed, the change that happened when a body went from moving to stationary in close proximity to where you were standing. Close, perhaps 4 meters, perhaps 3.5. She waited. "You're here again," he said. The voice was the same. That particular quality, low and settled, unhurried, not a question, an observation, again the same factual tone he had used about the tray. She turned slightly toward the sound. "I am," she said. A pause. She could hear him, not quite breathing, but the specific quality of close human presence, the very subtle sounds that a body makes that your brain learns to interpret when it has no other information to work from. "Are you assigned to this corridor?" he asked. "Yes, both days." "Yes." She could feel the weight of attention on her, not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that preceded unwanted questions or adjustments to the way someone was speaking. A different kind, the kind that came from genuine focus. "You move well in here," he said. "Given how crowded it's gotten." She didn't answer immediately. It's a good corridor, she said finally. Clear sightlines. She had said the word before she could decide not to, and then she held it there between them, not apologizing for it, because she had learned that apologizing for words like sightline and see and look did more damage than saying them did. She simply said them when they were the right words, which was often because language had not been rebuilt to accommodate her, and she had stopped waiting for it to be. He did not react the way people usually reacted, the small flinch, the quick social recalculation, the performance of not noticing what they had just noticed. He said, "Yes, it is." Just that, moving on, not making it a thing. She felt the weight of that, how much that simple absence of performance could carry. "You haven't introduced yourself," he said. "Neither have you." A beat, and then something happened in the quality of the silence around her that she identified after a moment as the particular silence of a person who was not used to being responded to that way, but who found the response interesting rather than offensive. "Caius," he said. She heard the name land. She heard, in the way names land when you already know the significance and are simply waiting for confirmation, everything that came with it. The Alpha King. He had been in the East Gallery yesterday. Celeste had said he was very present. She had been carrying her tray 4 meters from the Alpha King for 2 days. She kept her face still. She was very good at that. "Mara," she said. "Mara," he repeated it in the way some people repeat names, not to echo but to hold it for a moment, the way you hold a thing you are deciding what to do with. "Which pack?" "Arden." A pause. She could not tell if the name meant anything to him. She was not sure whether she wanted it to or not. "Your staff," he said. "I'm here to help with household management." She kept her voice clean, no apology in it, no edge either, just the facts as they were. Another pause, longer than the previous ones. She was aware, with the fine-grained awareness of someone for whom awareness was the primary tool, that something had shifted in his attention, not withdrawn but rearranged. Like a thing that has been held one way being turned slightly to examine a different angle. "You work quickly," he said. "I've noticed." "I notice things," she said. "It helps." "What kinds of things?" The question was direct and unguarded, genuinely curious, and it caught her because she had been having what she thought was a professional exchange, and the question had moved it into something else, the kind of conversation where a person was actually trying to understand rather than filling time with words. She considered it for a moment. "Sounds," she said, "patterns. The way a room sounds when it's nearly full versus when it has too many people in it and people start feeling uncomfortable. The way the air changes near a door that's open versus one that's closed. The difference between a crowd that's moving normally and one that's adjusting because someone important has entered." She had said more than she meant to. She stopped. A pause. "And which was it just now?" he asked. "When I came in." She turned her face toward him, not looking, not performing looking, simply orienting herself to the source of his voice in the way that was honest rather than the way that would look right. "Both," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "You know who I am," he said. "I know what your name means, yes. Does that change how you're speaking to me?" She thought about that carefully. She gave it the same care she gave all important questions, not rushing it. "No," she said. Another long pause. And in the pause she was aware of the corridor continuing around them, guests passing, conversation flowing, the rain against the windows. And she was also aware that for the duration of this exchange the world had contracted down to this specific 4 meters of space, and the conversation happening in it. "Arden Pack," he said, "who came representing your family to the presentations." She felt the shift in the air around her, not wind, something else. Something that moved through a conversation when a very precise question had just been asked, and the person asking it already had part of the answer. "My sister," she said, "Celeste. She's older. 2 years. And you're here as staff," she said, clean, final. A pause that lasted long enough to have meaning. "I see," he said. She opened her mouth and then closed it. He had said those words, "I see," in the specific way that meant the opposite of the literal definition. He had said them as someone who had understood something, who had put together 2 or 3 pieces of information and arrived at a conclusion, not about her blindness, about what it meant that she was here in this corridor with this tray, while a member of her family was in the formal presentation rooms. She had not said that. He had arrived there on his own. She did not know what to do with that. "The afternoon session is in an hour," she said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of how steady it was. "I should prepare the refreshment trays." A pause. "Go carefully," he said, the same words he had used the day before. But the same and also different. The difference being that the day before he had said it to fill the end of a brief exchange, and this time he said it and it had weight in it, the weight of a person who has said something they mean precisely. She moved. She had her tray and her map and her practiced calm, and she moved down the corridor at the same professional pace she had maintained for 2 days, and she did not let anything show on her face until she had turned the corner into the back hallway where the service door was and where she was alone. Then she stopped. She stood in the narrow hallway with her tray held in both hands, and she breathed, and she gave herself 30 seconds. He had noticed her 2 days running. He had stopped both days. He had asked her name. He had asked what pack. He had put together, quickly and accurately, the fact that something about the arrangement was unusual, and he had not made it a performance, had not exclaimed or questioned or made her the subject of a scene. He had simply noted it quietly and said, "I see," in the tone of a person who sees clearly and does not need to say so loudly. She thought about Celeste in the formal rooms. She thought about the tray in her hands. She thought about 3 years of the East Wing. She breathed. She went back to the kitchen. She restocked the tray. She went back to the corridor. She did everything she was meant to do, in the way she was meant to do it, and no one watching her from the outside would have known that anything was happening inside her that was different from any other point in any other day. But something was happening. She could feel it the way you feel a door opening in a house you thought you had mapped completely, the change in air, the sound of a space that turns out to be larger than you thought, a corridor you didn't know was there. She had been storing things for 3 years. She had been waiting, not hoping, but waiting in the way that careful people wait, for something she couldn't name. She was beginning, quietly, to wonder if she was going to be able to keep calling it simply waiting. The afternoon came and went. The rain continued. The corridor did its work and she did hers, and the day folded itself toward evening with the reliable passage of hours, and she moved through all of it with her usual precision and her usual quiet. She did not hear his footsteps again that afternoon. She noticed the absence the way you notice silence after a sound that has already ended. The evening was long in coming. When it did, she sat in the kitchen with Cole and Harriet and Bet and ate and spoke of ordinary things, and she was present in all the ways that mattered, and she listened to the dinner conversation with the part of her that was always listening, and she stored what she heard. But another part of her, the quieter part, the part she had been managing for 3 years, was thinking about a voice that moved through a crowd without hurrying, and the particular silence of a person who has understood something without needing to be told. She went to bed. She did not sleep for a long time. When she did, she dreamed about corridors that were wide and clear and well mapped, and herself moving through them without anything to prove to anyone, just moving, just belonging to the space the way she had always deserved to belong to it. She woke before dawn with the memory of the dream still full in her, and she lay still and held it carefully, the way you hold something you are not ready to examine in daylight, and she breathed, and she listened to the rain still falling outside the north window. And she thought, something is about to change. She did not know how she knew. She had no evidence. She had 30 seconds of corridor conversation twice with a man whose name meant more than she was allowing herself to consider. But she knew, in the way that the body knows things before the mind will allow them, she knew. She got up, she dressed, she went to the kitchen. She was ready. The formal presentation ceremony was scheduled for midday. Mara knew its exact timing because she had heard it discussed so many times over the past 2 days that the schedule had embedded itself in her memory without any effort on her part. 12 o'clock, the Great Hall, PAC representatives seated along the west wall, eligible Omegas presented in family order alphabetically, the Alpha King receiving each one formally. Arden was early in the alphabet. Celeste would be one of the first called. Mara knew this too. She knew all of it. She had been knowing it for months in the background, the way you know about something that is happening that you are not part of, not ignorance, just a careful, managed distance. She spent the morning in the kitchen. Not because Bet asked her to stay. Not because of her assignment, which was still the eastern corridor. She stayed because the kitchen was where her mapping was most complete, where she could move with the certainty of a fully known space, where she did not have to spend mental energy tracking herself in relation to the world around her. She told herself she was preparing for the afternoon shift. She chopped things that did not need chopping. She reorganized items that were already organized. Bet watched her do this without comment, which was its own kind of kindness. At 11:30, Harriet came in and said the great hall was full. Mara heard something shift in the kitchen air, not a physical shift, something quieter. The particular change in atmosphere that comes when a significant thing is about to happen, and the people around the center of it can feel it even from a distance. "Are you going to listen from the corridor?" Harriet said. She did not say this with any particular weight. She was not pressing. She was simply Harriet who noticed things and said them plainly and trusted you to do with them what you would. "I wasn't planning to," Mara said. Said Harriet. She chopped something. She did not say anything else. At 11:45, Mara put down what she was doing. She told herself she was going to refill the tray stands in the eastern corridor, which needed doing anyway, which was a true and useful thing. She picked up a tray. She went out of the kitchen. She did not go to the eastern corridor. She went to the service door at the back of the Great Hall, the one she had identified on her first mapping of the building, the narrow door through which catering staff could access the side of the hall without crossing the main floor. She stood inside it on the service side, which was a shadowed alcove with the door open just enough for her to stand in. She was staff, she had a tray, she was in a service area, none of this was unusual. The Great Hall was enormous. She could feel the size of it by the way sound moved inside it, the particular quality of a very large enclosed space, the way a voice spoken at normal volume could carry further than it should. There were perhaps 150 people in the room. She could estimate it by the layered quality of the noise, the density of breathing and movement, and the subtle sounds of bodies adjusting in formal seating. The ceremony began. She heard the official proceedings, formal language, pack names called, the structured protocol of an event that had been running this way for a long time. She tracked it with half her attention, the other half was on him. He was at the far end of the hall. She could tell by the particular place in the room from which voices were directed when they spoke formally. They were orienting toward the same fixed point, all of them, and that fixed point was at the north end of the hall, elevated slightly, as formal seats of authority almost always were. Caius. She had been calling him that in her mind for 2 days. She had not decided to do this, it had simply happened. Pack names were called. She heard Arden and the sound of her sister's careful, practiced footsteps crossing the formal floor. Celeste moved well under pressure. Mara had always known that about her, long before she had to assess it by sound alone. The steps were even, unhurried, professional. Their mother had coached her well. She heard the formal exchange, Celeste's voice poised and bright, saying the correct things. Caius's voice in return, the same low, settled quality she had heard in the corridor, but with a different register here, more formal, more precisely contained. The language of ceremony. She listened to him speak to her sister, with the complicated, quiet attention of a person, standing outside a lit window in the dark. She thought, this is what I should be feeling relieved about. That the right person, the prepared person, the appropriate person, the one the family had chosen and groomed and brought here exactly for this purpose, is the one standing in that room. She thought, I am relieved. She found, listening to her own internal state with the honesty she had always forced herself to have, that this was not quite true. What she felt was not relief, it was something more complex and less comfortable, something she was not ready to name. The presentations continued. Arden had come and gone, she should have gone back to the kitchen. She did not go back to the kitchen. She stood in the service alcove with her tray and she listened. Around the midpoint of the ceremony, something changed. She felt it before she understood it, the specific change in the atmosphere of a large room when the person at its center has altered their attention. Not visibly, she knew nothing about what was visible, but in the quality of the air, the subtle reorientation of focus that moved through a crowd like a current when the current's source shifted. He had looked toward her side of the hall. She could not be certain of this. It was inference from sensation. But she had spent 3 years turning inference from sensation into reliable information, and she trusted it. She did not move. The presentations continued. He spoke the formal words to each family's representative. She tracked the sound of his voice through the ceremony with the careful attention of someone who knows they are being very careful and is doing it anyway. And then she did something she had not planned to do, had not given herself permission to do, and which she understood later was the beginning of something she had not quite been ready to acknowledge was beginning. She let herself notice how she felt when he spoke. Not clinically, not managed, just let herself notice. The low register of the voice, the unhurried quality of it, which held even in formal ceremony. The precision of his language, which was formal and correct, and also, in some way she could feel but not quite explain, entirely itself. Not performed formality but earned formality, the kind that comes from someone who occupies their role from the inside out rather than the outside in. She felt something warm and unhelpful settle in the center of her chest. She pressed it firmly back. She was a staff member in a service alcove. She had a tray. She was nobody's candidate, nobody's choice, nobody's anything in this hall. She was the thing the Arden family had managed around so carefully that she had nearly managed to make it seem like a reasonable arrangement. She went back to the kitchen. She did it quickly and cleanly, before she could talk herself out of it, before she could spend another 30 seconds listening to a voice that had nothing to do with her. She moved through the service corridor at a pace that Bet would have raised an eyebrow at, and Cole would have been startled by, and she reached the kitchen and set the tray down on the counter with a controlled precision that she knew Harriet was watching from the table, but that she refused to explain. "Back already," Bet said. "The corridor needs covering before the afternoon session," Mara said. Bet did not call this what it was. Mara went to the corridor, she did her job. She moved through the afternoon shift with everything correctly in place, her position, her tray, her precision, the professional neutrality that she wore as much for herself as for anyone else. She helped a guest find the correct session room by listening to the man's description of where he needed to be and guiding him from the sound of the corridor layout she carried in her head. She cleared trays and refilled them. She went where she was assigned and did what she was supposed to do. She was very well behaved all afternoon. At 4:30, the eastern corridor quieted. The afternoon sessions had ended. The building was in the liminal state between day program and evening events, the specific quiet of a place where the day has not yet decided what it is doing next. She was walking back toward the service wing when the footsteps came. From behind her and to the left, and she knew them in less than 3 steps. She kept walking. She heard them adjust, the pace changing, not to catch up but to come alongside, the deliberate pace of someone choosing to fall into rhythm with another person rather than overtaking them. He came up beside her. She kept her forward position, her pace unchanged, her tray in both hands. "The presentations are done," he said. Walking beside her now, his voice coming from her right, slightly above the level her head was at, which confirmed the height she had estimated. "I heard," she said. "You were in the hall." She did not break stride. "I was covering the service alcove." "You listened for 45 minutes from a service alcove." She said nothing. He said nothing either, and they walked in parallel for 5 steps, and she thought, this is the moment. This is the moment where something is either said or not said, where the shape of a thing is either acknowledged or put away, and whichever happens will depend on the next sentence. "Why wasn't your name on the presentation register?" he said. The question landed with the clean, blunt force of a thing that has been very precisely aimed. Not cruel, just accurate. The accuracy that comes from a person who has been thinking about a question and has decided to ask it plainly. She stopped. He stopped beside her. "I'm staff," she said. "We've established that. Your sister is Arden, you're Arden, you are the correct age, you are unmated." He said these things in the same factual, observational tone he used for everything. "You were not on the register." She turned her face toward his voice. "The family made a decision," she said, "about what was appropriate." "On what basis?" She held the tray. She held it with both hands precisely, and she stood in the corridor with the afternoon light she could not see coming through the windows she could feel, and she said something she had not said to anyone ever, not in 3 years. She said it not because she had decided to, not because she had planned to, but because he had asked in a way that did not have any performance in it, and she had learned the difference. "I'm blind," she said. "They decided that was a reason." A pause. Not the flinching kind, not the recalibrating kind, not the kind that preceded careful, managed language. A pause that was simply a person absorbing information and sitting with it before they spoke. "And you disagreed," he said. She almost said no. She almost said the trained, smoothed thing, the "I understand their reasoning," or the "it's complicated," or any of the other phrases she had learned to use that let the conversation move past the subject without anyone having to spend time in it. She said yes. One word. It was the most honest thing she had said out loud in 3 years. He was quiet for a moment. "I'd like you to come to the evening reception," he said, "not as staff. As a guest of the summit." She stood very still. "That's not," she started. "I know it isn't the arrangement your family made," he said. "I'm making a different arrangement." The corridor was empty around them. The afternoon was settling into its waiting silence. She held the tray in both hands and she thought about the east wing at home, and the kitchen window, and 3 years of careful, managed smallness, and she thought about what it meant that a man she had spoken to twice was standing in a corridor beside her saying things that no one had said to her in a very long time. She thought about her father's face, her mother's managed voice, Celeste's carefully prepared dress. She thought about the word appropriate. "My family will object," she said. "Yes," he said. "They will." She absorbed that. He had not said it won't matter. He had not said don't worry about them. He had said yes, they will, because that was true. And he had said it as though the truth of it was simply part of the picture, not a reason to stop. "Why?" she said. She did not specify what she was asking. She did not think she had to. Another pause. This one had a different quality from all the others. "Because you've been counting the steps in every room you've entered for 2 days," he said. "Because when you collide with something you catch your tray before you catch your footing. Because you knew I was in that corridor yesterday before I was close enough for most people to notice." He paused. "Because you said yes, just now when you've been saying careful, managed things for a very long time, and I think you're tired of the managed things." She stood in the corridor. She stood in the corridor with her tray in both hands and the afternoon light she could not see, and something tore, very quietly, in the center of her chest. Not painfully, the way a seam tears when something has grown too large for the space it's been kept in. She breathed. "The evening reception," she said. "Yes." "What time?" 7. She nodded once. She did not say anything else. She turned. She knew the corridor layout perfectly. She did not hesitate, and she walked back toward the service wing. She did not let herself examine any of it until she had turned the corner. Then she stood in the narrow back hallway for the second time in 2 days, and this time she did not allow herself only 30 seconds. She stood there for a full minute, breathing, feeling the thing that was happening inside her with honest attention. Something was moving, something that had been still for 3 years. She did not know what was coming. She did not know what it would cost. She had been good for so long at not thinking about what things cost. She pressed her free hand flat against the wall. She felt the solidity of it, the cold stone, the real and certain physical fact of it. 7 o'clock. She went back to the kitchen. She had some things to arrange. Bet found out at 5:30. Not because Mara told her. Mara had been deciding how to tell her when Bet appeared in the doorway of the small service room, where Mara was pressing one of her 2 non-working dresses. The dark green one with the collar she had always liked because the fabric was heavy and fell straight, and did not require visual confirmation to know it was sitting correctly. "What are you doing?" Bet said. There was no good way to answer this that would also be quick. "Getting dressed," Mara said. Bet was quiet for a moment, not the brief transitional quiet, the long kind. "The evening reception is a formal event," Bet said. "I know. For guests. I know that too." Another silence. Mara kept pressing. The iron was one she had located that morning, on a shelf in the service room, and she had confirmed its heat setting by holding her hand near it at 3 measured distances, the way she had learned to measure heat, not touching, just proximity, accurate enough. "Mara," Bet said. "He asked me," Mara said, before Bet could finish whatever the sentence was. "The king, he asked me to come." The silence this time was a different kind, the kind that has several things in it at once. She heard Bet sit down on the single chair inside the door, the small creak of it, the soft sound of someone setting down something they had been carrying. Your mother is going to be there, Bet said. Yes. Your father. Yes. Celeste. Yes, Mara said. A long, long pause. Do you want me to come with you? Bet said. Mara stopped pressing. She held the iron in both hands for a moment, very still, and she felt something move through her that she did not have a clean word for. Gratitude, yes, but also something older and quieter, the particular feeling that comes when a person who has been steadily, quietly present for a long time says the right thing without being asked to. No, she said, I need to go alone. I know, Bet said. I wanted you to know the option existed. She finished pressing. She put on the dark green dress and the good shoes she had brought because she had packed them without quite admitting to herself why. She put her hair up herself, which took 12 minutes and which she accomplished by working in sections, each one checked by touch before she moved to the next. She did not need a mirror. She never used a mirror. When she was dressed, she stood in the small room and she did the checking she always did before going anywhere that mattered. Collar straight, dress hanging correctly, no threads visible at the cuffs. She ran her hands down the fabric from shoulder to hem and the fabric was smooth and the dress was good, and she was as ready as she was going to be. She walked to the reception hall. She had mapped the route from the service wing on the first day, which she had done because she mapped every route, not because she had imagined needing it for this purpose. The route was 47 steps with 2 turns and a change in floor surface from stone to wood at the 3rd turn, which she felt through the soles of her shoes as reliably as a compass reading. The reception hall was already occupied. She could hear it from the corridor, the distinctive sound of a formal gathering in the early stages, perhaps 70 people, the careful modulated volume of voices that know they are being watched and have decided to perform ease rather than actually have it. She stood outside the door for 2 seconds. Then she went in. The door opened to a wide entry point, which she stepped through and held to briefly while she took the room's measure. High ceilings, she could feel the expanded acoustic space, the slight delay in how sound returned to her. Long room, central corridor of movement, gathered clusters along the sides, servers moving in the middle, music from somewhere to her right, live, quiet, a string instrument and something else. She stepped forward and began to navigate. She moved with exactly the same precision she used in every unfamiliar formal space. Not hesitation, she never permitted herself to hesitate, because hesitation invited observation and observation invited the adjustments and the careful faces and the performed concern that she had spent 3 years working around. She moved with the practiced naturalness of someone who belongs in a space, because belonging in a space was not about vision, it was about commitment, and she was committed to being here. She heard her mother's voice at 12 o'clock from her entry point, 30 meters away. She moved left. She found a position along the wall where she could stand with her back near the surface and the room in front of her, her preferred position in any formal space, giving her the most complete acoustic picture. She accepted a glass from a passing server, touching the server's tray edge lightly as a directional guide. She held the glass. She did not drink from it. She was not there to drink. She was there to be present, to occupy the space, to be in a room she had been told, implicitly and repeatedly and in every way except with direct words, that she was not for. She stood at the wall and she listened, and she was there, and for approximately 8 minutes nothing happened except the reception proceeding around her in the ordinary way of formal events. Then she heard her sister, Celeste's heels 20 feet closing, and then a stop close to her left. Mara, Celeste's voice had an unusual quality, not angry, not performed, stripped, the way voices get stripped when the thing they are encountering is genuinely unexpected and they have not had time to arrange a response. Good evening, Mara said. What are you? Celeste stopped, started again. You're dressed. I am. You're at the reception. I am. A pause. She could hear her sister breathing, slightly faster than normal, processing. Did mother? No. Another pause. Father? No. Celeste was quiet for a moment. Mara could feel the shape of what her sister was thinking, not because she was reading a face, but because she had known Celeste's thinking patterns for 20 years, and the particular quality of this silence was the silence of someone who had a question they were not sure they were ready to hear the answer to. Then how? Celeste said quietly. I was invited, Mara said. By whom? Mara held her glass. Celeste, she said, I would like to be here this evening. I'm not going to cause trouble. I'm not going to embarrass anyone. That's not what I'm worried about, Celeste said. And she said it with a speed and a genuineness that landed oddly, that Mara turned over for a moment before she understood it. Her sister was not worried about embarrassment, she was worried about something else. I'm worried about Mother, Celeste said, when she sees you. Mara held her glass and thought about her mother's voice in the hallway that morning, managing the day's arrangements in the particular register of a person who has everything under control, who has always had everything under control, who had made a very specific set of decisions about how to manage her younger daughter, and who had not revisited those decisions in 3 years. She'll see me, Mara said. That's rather the point. Celeste made a soft sound, not a gasp, not quite a laugh either, the sound that exists between those two things. I don't understand, Celeste said, and she said it honestly, which was more than Mara had expected. I mean, I want to, but I don't. What has changed? Mara considered how to answer this. She had been considering it all afternoon, since the corridor, since the walk back to the kitchen, since she had put on the dark green dress in the small service room while Bet sat in the chair and did not try to talk her out of it. She had been turning over the shape of what had changed, trying to find the simplest, most accurate way to describe a thing that was not simple. Someone asked me a question, she said, and I told him the truth, and the truth had a sound to it that I had forgotten. She paused. I think I got used to saying the managed thing. I didn't realize how tired I was of it until I stopped. A silence. Who is he? Celeste said. Mara did not answer. She felt at her right at that moment the specific shift in the room's texture that she had learned to associate with the movement of a person whose presence redistributed the attention in a space. Not loud, not announced, but present in the way that some people are present, the way that makes the air around them feel like it has orientation. She heard him, not speaking, just moving through the room, and the room moving around him in the specific way it did. Celeste went very still beside her. Then quietly, oh. Just that, oh, and Mara could hear in the single syllable that her sister had understood something, not all of it, but enough. Celeste, Mara said, thank you for being worried about me. A long pause, then very softly, you should have been in that room this morning, the formal one. Another pause, you should have been there. It was the closest Celeste had come in 3 years to saying anything about the East Wing, about the managed distance, about the decisions the family had made around and without her. Mara did not know what it had cost her sister to say it. She imagined it was not nothing. I know, Mara said. Celeste squeezed her hand once, the way she used to do when they were young and frightened. Then she moved away, and Mara stood alone at her position by the wall, and the reception continued around her. 4 minutes later, her mother found her. She knew the footsteps before they arrived. She had always known her mother's footsteps. The sound of them now had a quality she recognized immediately, the particular compact, controlled pace of a person who is managing an emotion they do not want visible on their face. Her mother stopped beside her. Mara, the word had a pressure in it, not a question, not a greeting. Just her name, said with the particular weight of a person who has arrived at a situation they were not prepared for and has decided to meet it with controlled authority. Good evening, Mother, Mara said. What is this? Her mother said, low, careful, the voice she used when she needed to manage something without making it visible to the room. A reception, Mara said. Don't, her mother said, still low. But there was something in it now, under the control, the way there is something moving under ice when the temperature changes. This is not your place. You know this is not your place. Mara held her glass. She thought about what she would have said once, 3 months ago, 1 year ago. She thought about the way she had always found the managed answer, the careful one, the one that let the situation dissolve without a scene. She thought about a man in a corridor asking her a direct question. She thought about the word yes and how it had felt in her mouth. I was invited, she said, by the Alpha King. A pause. The room around them continued. No one within earshot showed any sign of listening. But the space between Mara and her mother had a charge to it now, the specific electricity of a confrontation that both parties know is happening and neither has declared. That is not possible, her mother said. It happened, Mara said. Her mother did not speak for a moment. Then, you must have misunderstood, you. I didn't misunderstand, Mara said. And her voice was steady, and it was clear, and it was honest, and it was none of the managed things. He asked me to come as a guest. He used those words. I heard them clearly. Another long silence. Mara, the word had a different quality now, not authority, something more uncertain underneath it. You must understand how this looks. You must understand what people will. What people will think, Mara said. Yes, that the Arden family has a second daughter, that she's present at the summit. She paused. Is that the terrible thing? Her mother made a sound that was almost inaudible, the small sound of a person who has been asked a question that has found its way past the prepared answers. The question she had always been able to refuse was now taking a shape she couldn't dismiss. Before she could answer, before either of them could say anything else, the room changed. Not dramatically, quietly, but in a way that Mara felt through every sense she had, the particular shift of a space when its central gravitational point has moved. Caius had seen them. She knew it. She could not explain precisely how she knew it. But she had been mapping his presence through the room for the past 10 minutes, the same way she always mapped a room, by its acoustic texture and the movements of the people in it, and she knew that the room's texture had changed because his attention had. 3 seconds later, she heard footsteps that she recognized completely. They were not hurrying, they were not performing. They were simply coming toward her as unhurried as they always were, and the room was making way for them in the way the room always made way, and her mother had gone very still beside her. He stopped. She felt the distance, 3 feet approximately to her right. Mara, he said, and then Mrs. Arden. The way he said her mother's name was not cold, and it was not warm. It was the tone of a person who is addressing another person with precisely the correct amount of formality and nothing else. Not heat, not distance, just precision. Mara's mother said, in the voice of someone whose prepared responses had just encountered something they had not been prepared for, "Your Majesty, we were just." Yes, he said, just that, and the single syllable had the quality of a door being closed politely but completely. He had registered what was happening. He was not asking about it. He turned slightly toward Mara. She felt the shift in orientation. "I'm glad you came," he said. 3 words. Mara heard them land. She heard them land in the room, in the particular way that things land when the person saying them occupies the kind of authority that makes every word they say take up more space than the same words would in anyone else's mouth. Her mother did not speak. "I'm glad I came too," Mara said. And she meant it with everything in her. Her father arrived 10 minutes later. She heard him coming from across the room, the familiar left-weighted step, moving faster than he usually did in formal spaces, not running, not quite, but with the contained urgency of someone who has received information and is moving toward it while still maintaining the appearance of a man who is simply crossing a room. He stopped on her left. Her mother was already there. Caius had moved slightly aside, not far but far enough to make it clear he had not left and was not going to leave. She felt the architecture of the situation, herself at the center of it, her parents on one side, the space on her right where his presence still registered. "Oh," and her mother said. Her father said nothing for a moment. She could read the quality of his silence, the kind that came from a man who was working out what was happening by looking at it, who needed an extra second because what he was seeing had not been part of any plan he had made. "Mara," he said. His voice had the careful, measured quality he used when he was doing something that required precision. "Can I ask what you're doing here?" "Standing at a reception," she said. "You know what I mean." "I do," she said, "and I think you know why I'm here. Mother has had time to tell you." Another pause. Behind her she was distantly aware of the reception continuing, the hum of it, the music, the servers moving, and she was aware of the immediate space around her which had contracted to this. Her parents, herself, the 3 feet of air between her and a man who had asked her to be here. "This is not the arrangement we discussed," her father said. "You discussed it," she said. "You and Mother, you discussed it for 3 years. I was not involved in the discussion." The words landed. She could feel them land, the way certain honest things do, not like blows but like stones set down in a space, taking up room, refusing to be lifted. "That's not fair," her father said. His voice had shifted, still careful but something underneath it now, the sound of a person who has been told something they don't want to examine. I know you believed you were protecting me, she said. She said it clearly and without heat. She had thought about how to say this many times over 3 years in the privacy of her room at night when she was being honest with herself. She had never imagined saying it out loud in a reception hall with an audience. I know you thought it was the right thing. I'm not angry about the believing. I'm telling you that it was wrong. Her mother made a small sound. Mara, her father said, this is not the time or the place. It never is, she said. That's been the problem. A silence. A real one this time. Not a pause in a sentence but an actual stopping, the kind where people are absorbing things and not yet ready to speak. She held it. She had said what she said and it was out and there was no manner of taking it back, and she found, standing there, that she did not want to take it back. Mr. Arden, Caius spoke from her right. His voice had the quality of a person entering a conversation with deliberate care, not interrupting, not overriding, but placing himself into the silence that was already there. I'd like to speak with you privately if you're willing. Her father was quiet for a moment. Your Majesty, he said, with the reflexive formality that rank produced even in complicated moments. There are matters I'd like to discuss with your family, Caius said. This evening, if possible, I can arrange a room. Another pause. Of course, her father said. The words were correct and the voice beneath them had the sound of a man walking towards something he did not yet understand but could not refuse. They arranged it quickly and efficiently, the way formal things are arranged when one of the people arranging them is a king and the others have no alternative but to cooperate. A side room, off the main corridor, 15 minutes. Her parents moved away into the reception to find Celeste. Caius's small formation of attendants, who had been positioned at a respectful distance, recalibrated around the changed plan with the quiet efficiency of people who managed changed plans regularly. She stood in the moment after. You didn't have to do that, she said. She did not mean it as a complaint. I know, he said, I wanted to. She thought about this. What are you going to say to them? Several things, he said. The first being that you are an eligible Omega from a recognized pack, and your name should have been on the presentation register. She absorbed that. The second, he said, is that I intend to make an independent assessment of your candidacy, regardless of how the formal registration was handled. She stood very still. She had been thinking about the word candidacy for 2 days. She had been very carefully not thinking about it. She had been managing it to the edges of her attention with the same practiced care with which she managed everything that was too large and too uncertain to examine directly. She had been telling herself that a person in a service alcove and a person in a corridor, and a few minutes of honest conversation was not the basis for anything, that she was filling in details that weren't there, that she was reading meaning into practical kindness. And then he had just said, plainly, in the matter-of-fact tone he used for all things, that he intended to assess her as a candidate. She made herself breathe. That's a significant statement, she said. I know. You've known me for 2 days. I've been paying attention for 2 days, he said. That's not nothing. She turned her face toward his voice. Why me, she said. There are formal candidates, prepared candidates, women who came here specifically for this, who have the right backing, the right standing, the right everything. Why are you making this complicated when it doesn't have to be? A pause that had thought in it. Because complicated is sometimes the only honest option, he said. Because I've spent 3 days watching eligible women perform what they thought I wanted to see, and in 2 days in a corridor, you showed me more of who you actually are than any formal presentation has managed in 3 days. She breathed. You're a king, she said. This decision has consequences that go beyond. I know what the consequences are, he said. It was not impatient, it was certain. The certainty of a person who has thought about a thing and arrived at a position and is not in the early stages of considering it. I have been thinking about those consequences since yesterday. I am aware of all of them. I am telling you what I've decided. What have you decided? Another pause. That you count, he said. That someone should have told you that a long time ago. That I would like the opportunity to say it correctly and formally, if you'll allow me to. She stood in the reception hall with the sounds of the formal event flowing around her, and the music from the corner and the servers and the guests and all of it. And inside her something that had been compressed and held and managed for 3 years was pressing against its containment with a steady, enormous force. And she was holding it in because this was not the place, and she was not a person who fell apart in the middle of formal gatherings, and she had spent 3 years being very, very controlled. "I need to think," she said. "Of course," he said without any deflation. As though he had expected this, as though it was the right answer, as though he respected it the same way he respected everything else she said. "We have the meeting with your family tonight. Nothing is decided yet. Nothing needs to be decided yet." A pause. "But I meant what I said." "I know," she said. "Does that frighten you?" She thought about it honestly. "No," she said with the honesty she had been practicing. "Not the part you said, the part that comes after it frightens me." "What part is that?" "Wanting something," she said. "I've been very careful not to want things, it's easier." He was quiet for a moment. "Easier than what?" "Than being disappointed by them," she said. She felt him standing very still, in the specific way that some people go still when they have heard something true. "Yes," he said. "Just that, not 'I understand,' or 'that makes sense,' or any of the things people said to fill the space after an admission like that. Just yes. Acknowledging the truth of it, the weight of it, setting it down alongside the other things that had been said and leaving it there." She appreciated that more than she had words for. "The side room," she said, "is it going to go badly?" "That depends on your parents," he said, "but I'm not going into it to ask permission. I'm going in to explain what has happened and what I intend to do." "Those are different things." "Very different," he agreed. She nodded once. She turned back toward the reception. "I'll find somewhere to wait," she said. "You could stay in the room," he said. "It's your conversation too." She paused. She had not considered this. She had been assuming so many things, she realized, with the clarity of someone who has been operating on a set of assumptions for so long they have stopped being visible. She had assumed that the meeting about her would happen without her, because meetings about her had always happened without her. "Yes," she said, "I think I should be there." "Good," he said. There was something in that single word, not satisfaction, not the pleasure of getting what he wanted, but something quieter, recognition. The sound of a person who has seen a decision being made and approves of it because it is right, not because it benefits them. She went to find Bet. Not because she needed anything from her, because she wanted Bet to know before the evening moved further what was happening. Not the full shape of it, that was still too uncertain, too large to put language to, but enough. She found Bet in the kitchen, as expected, winding down the evening service with Cole and Harriet. "Bet," she said from the doorway. Bet looked up. She could feel the attention orient toward her. "There's going to be a meeting tonight," Mara said. "With my family. I don't know what happens after it." She paused. "I wanted you to know." Bet set down what she was holding. She was quiet for a moment. "Are you all right?" she said. "I don't know yet," Mara said honestly, "but I think I'm going to be." Bet made the sound, the one that Mara had known her whole life, the small, quiet sound that in Bet's vocabulary was the equivalent of a long speech. The sound that meant, "I believe you." The sound that meant, "I'm here." The sound that meant, "You don't have to say anything else." "Go," Bet said. Mara went. The side room was small and formal, with a round table and chairs that she mapped in her first 10 steps inside. Her parents arrived shortly after her. Celeste came with them, which surprised her until she heard her sister's footsteps and recognized them, purposeful, not reluctant. Celeste had chosen to come. That was interesting. They arranged themselves around the table. She took the chair that put her closest to the room's central axis, not by conscious plan, by instinct, the same instinct that had been guiding her navigation for 3 years. Caius came in last. He sat. The room settled. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said. No preamble, not the formal language of ceremony, just direct, the same quality she had heard in the corridor. "I'd like to speak plainly, and I'd ask that you do the same." Her father said, "Of course, Your Majesty." "Your daughter Mara," Caius said, "was not on the summit presentation register. I'd like to understand why." A pause. Her father's voice, when it came, had the quality of a man who had been preparing for several versions of this conversation, and was choosing, carefully, which version to give. There are circumstances, she requires." "She requires nothing," Caius said, and the 3 words were quiet and they were flat and they had the quality of an ending, not aggressive, simply final. She is 20 years of age, she is unmated, she is from a recognized pack, she navigated this entire building without assistance for 2 days in a way that I have not seen most cited delegates manage." He paused. "The circumstances you are referring to are not a barrier, they were treated as one. I'd like to understand why." The silence in the room was the kind that exists when a question has been asked that everyone knows the answer to, and the answer is not something anyone wants to say out loud, because saying it out loud makes it into something that has to be examined. Her mother spoke, and her voice, for the first time in Mara's memory, did not have the managed quality. It had something more fragile in it, something that had been under the management all along and was now slightly visible. "We were protecting her," she said. We thought it was the best thing. She was young and she had just, and the world is hard enough, and we—" "Mother," Mara said. Her mother stopped. "I know you thought it was protection," Mara said. She said it the same way she had said it at the reception, clearly, without heat, without anger, just with truth. "I'm not asking you to have been different than you were. I'm telling you what it was like to live inside the thing you were protecting me with." She paused. It was a small space. It has been a very small space for a very long time. The silence was absolute. Celeste's breath, somewhere to Mara's right, was slightly uneven. Not crying, but close to it, the tight breath of someone who is holding something together. Her father spoke. His voice, when it came, was not the authoritative voice, not the managing voice, not the formal voice. It was something older and more uncertain. "Mara, he stopped. He started again. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything tonight," she said. "Tonight isn't about the past. Tonight is about what happens next." She turned her face toward Caius's position. "Tell them," she said. "Tell them what you told me." And he did. Caius spoke for approximately 20 minutes. She tracked the time by the quality of the room, how it changed as he spoke, the specific way a room in which people are hearing something they did not expect changes around its edges first, and then its center. The way her parents' breathing shifted from the controlled pattern of people managing a situation to something less controlled, more reactive. He was not angry, that was the thing she noticed. He did not speak with the heat of someone making a case or the pressure of someone applying force. He spoke the way he had spoken in the corridor, as though he was sharing a clear set of facts that had led him to a clear set of conclusions, and he was presenting them as honestly as he knew how, and the conclusions were not up for debate even though the reasoning was offered transparently. He said that he had been watching the summit's service areas since the first morning, which was something she had not known. He said that he had noticed her because the way she moved through the building was not consistent with the role she appeared to be filling, and that inconsistency had interested him, and he had followed the interest with the same directness he brought to everything. He said that he had spoken with her twice in the corridor, and that both conversations had given him information that the formal presentations had not. He said, and this was the sentence that changed the texture of the room in the most significant way, that he was formally requesting that Mara Arden be reconsidered for inclusion in the summit's eligible candidate register, and that he would be pursuing an independent assessment of her candidacy, with or without the family's registration. Her father asked what that meant practically. Caius explained with the same unhurried clarity that it meant the summit's formal proceedings could be reopened with a supplementary registration, which was within his authority to request. That it had not been done before was not a barrier to doing it now. He had confirmed this with his advisors before coming to the reception. Her mother asked, and Mara could hear the many things her mother was trying not to say underneath the question, whether this was simply, she paused, a gesture of accommodation. "No," Caius said. 2 letters, not elaborated. Celeste made a small sound. From the timing of it and its quality, Mara thought it might have been a laugh that was quickly repressed. Her father was quiet for a long time after Caius stopped speaking. The quality of his silence had changed over the course of the meeting. It had come in carrying the weight of a man managing a situation, and now it had the different weight of a man who is inside something that has moved beyond management into something more honest and more uncomfortable and more necessary. "You are serious," her father said. Not a question exactly, more like someone trying the words, testing whether they had real weight. "I am entirely serious," Caius said. Another long silence. Mara, her father's voice was directed at her now, not at Caius. It had the sound of something old in it, something that had been covered over with management and formality, and the arrangements of a man who ran a household and a pack standing in a social position, and which was now in this small room with this particular pressure applied, becoming briefly visible. Do you want this? She had been waiting for the question. She had been preparing it in the background of everything that had happened since the corridor, shaping the answer carefully, honestly, the way she shaped everything she said now because she had decided, in the service alcove of the great hall at midday, that she was done with managed answers. Yes, she said. Her father breathed one slow, long breath. I have not been a good father to you, he said. In this specific way, in the way of letting this go on as long as it did, I have not been what I should have been. The room was very quiet. I know, Mara said. I know what you thought, she said, not cutting him off. Completing the sentence for him gently, because she could hear that the sentence was going somewhere painful, and she did not need him to go all the way to the end of it tonight. We can talk about what you thought, later, not tonight. No, he said, tonight, I want to say tonight. He stopped. He started again. I'm sorry, I'm telling you I'm sorry, that's all. I don't know if it covers it and I don't expect it to. I'm saying it because it's what's true and I should have said it a long time ago. The room was so quiet that she could hear the music from the reception hall, muffled by the distance and the closed door. A string instrument, slow and low. She held the apology, she did not rush it. She did not perform forgiveness for the room's benefit, did not say it's fine or I understand in the managed way that would let everyone release the breath they were holding. She held it and she sat with it, and she gave it the honest consideration it deserved. I hear you, she said finally. I'll need time with it. Yes, he said, of course. But I want you to know, she paused. I don't want it to be like it was when we go home. I don't want to go back to the East Wing. You won't, he said. His voice had the quality of a decision that had just been made and would not be remade. Her mother had been quiet for a long time. She spoke now, and her voice had the careful quality of someone navigating something very precisely because they know that the words they choose matter. What do you need from us, she said. For this, for what he is proposing, what do you need from us? Mara thought about it. To be included, she said, in the decision, in the conversation, not managed, not rooted around, just included. A silence. All right, her mother said. Simple, direct, not decorated with explanation or justification. Caius, who had been present and quiet through the family conversation with the specific quality of someone who was there as a witness rather than a participant, spoke now. The supplementary registration will need to be filed in the morning, he said. I'll have my staff prepare it. Your signature will be required, Mr. Arden. You'll have it, her father said. The meeting ended, not with ceremony, not with anything formal. Her parents stood to leave, and there was a moment, a brief, real moment, when her father's footsteps came toward her and stopped close, and she felt his hand on her shoulder for just a moment, not the managing kind of touch, not the careful kind, just a hand on a shoulder. And then he moved away. Celeste was the last to leave. She stopped beside Mara at the door. I'm coming with you tomorrow morning, Celeste said, for the registration, whatever you need. You don't have to, Mara said. I know, Celeste said. And then very quietly, the way she had said things when they were girls and it was very late and the house was very quiet. I should have said something sooner, a long time sooner. I'm sorry. Mara found her sister's hand in the space between them, by sound and by proximity, and she held it for a moment. We'll figure it out, Mara said. Celeste squeezed her hand. Then she was gone and the door closed, and Mara was alone in the small room with the round table and the chairs she had mapped when she came in. And Caius. He was still there. She could hear the quiet presence of him, the particular stillness of a person who is not in a hurry and has nothing to perform. You handled that very well, he said. I told the truth, she said, that's all. That's a harder thing than people give it credit for, he said. She stood in the empty room and felt the strange, unmoored quality of a moment after something significant has happened. The meeting was done. The words had been said. The things that had been managed for 3 years had been set down in the middle of a room and left there, and now she was standing in the aftermath of that, which was unfamiliar territory, which she did not have a map for. What happens now, she said. The registration in the morning, he said, and after that I'd like to speak with you further if you're willing. To assess my candidacy, she said it evenly. To know you better, he said, The candidacy is a formal process. What I'm asking about is something else. A pause. I'd like to know who you are when you're not carrying a tray and managing a situation. She felt something shift in her, not the large thing that had been shifting all evening, not the seam tearing, but something smaller and more surprising. Something that felt close to the beginning of what she realized she had been calling something else in order to avoid calling it what it was. I like talking to you, she said. She said it carefully, measuring it, making sure it was the exact right size, not more than what she could stand behind, not less than what was true. I haven't liked talking to many people in 3 years. Most people talk to me in a way that requires something from me, managing how they feel about what I can't do, making them comfortable with it. You don't do that. I'm not trying not to do it, he said. I simply don't find it necessary. I know, she said, that's the part I like. A pause. What do you find necessary in a conversation? He said. She considered it. Honesty, she said. Precision. The actual sense that the other person is listening to what I'm saying rather than managing their response to it before I've finished saying it. She paused. And someone who asks direct questions, I've had so few of those in recent years. I tend to ask direct questions, he said. I've noticed. He moved, not away toward her, or rather to stand alongside her, a repositioning that brought him to her left instead of directly across the room. She tracked the shift automatically. Can I ask you something direct? He said. You may as well, she said. It seems to be the thing we do. A pause, not a long one, a measured one, the pause of a person who has the question ready and is deciding on its exact phrasing. Are you afraid of this? He said. Not the family, not the registration, this, what might be between us if you let it. The question landed, she let it land. She sat with it for a genuine moment, not a polite one. Yes, she said, a little. Why? Because I have been very careful for 3 years to want only things that were within reach, she said. Because this is very far from anything I thought was within reach. And because, she stopped, started again. Because when you want something this far away and you don't get it, the distance you fall is considerable. He was quiet. The specific quiet of a person who has heard something and is honoring it by not rushing past it. Yes, he said, that's true. You're not going to tell me not to be afraid of it, she said. No, being afraid of it makes sense. A pause. I'm telling you I'm aware of the distance too. I'm telling you I've thought about what I'm asking. Another pause, and then something in his voice that she had not heard there before, not vulnerability, not quite, but something adjacent to it, the sound of a person being honest about themselves rather than simply observing others honestly. I have spent 4 years in this role making decisions that were the right decisions, the correct ones. The ones that served the position and the pax and the greater good. He paused. This is the first decision in 4 years that I have made for myself, from myself, because it is what I want. She absorbed that. You're not certain it's right, she said. I'm certain it's honest, he said. That's what I know, the rest is, he paused. The rest is what it is when you make honest decisions, uncertain and worth it. She stood in the small room with the round table, and she thought about 3 years of choosing the certain thing, the small thing, the thing that was within reach and could not disappoint her. She thought about the east wing and the tray and the 47 steps from the service corridor to the reception hall. She thought about the word worth it. I'd like to have those conversations, she said finally. The ones about who I am when I'm not managing a situation. Good, he said. I should go back to the service quarters tonight, she said. It would be better not to. Of course, he said. No objection, no negotiation. Simply agreement, the easy agreement of someone who has no interest in pressing. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, he agreed. She found her way to the door by the map she had built when she came in. She put her hand on the frame. She paused. Caius, she said. The name felt different in her mouth now than it had when she first heard it. Earlier it had been a word she was still learning the weight of. Now it had some of her own breath in it, some of her own decision. Yes. Thank you for asking me the direct questions, she said. It has been a long time since someone did that without needing me to make it comfortable for them afterward. A pause. Thank you for answering them, he said, honestly. She nodded once. She went out of the room. The corridor was quiet. Late now, the event wind down sounds of a formal building settling toward night. She walked through it with the same precision she always had, her map fully in place, no hesitation. She was halfway to the service wing when she allowed herself to feel it. Not all of it, it was too much all at once to feel all of it, but a portion, the beginning of something that was possibly, carefully, tentatively something she recognized. Something she had last felt when she was 16, and the world had been wide and open, and she had not yet learned to make peace with its smallness. She breathed it in, she breathed it out, she kept walking. The service quarters were quiet. Cole had left a small light on in the hallway, which she could feel by the warm air near the wall, and she thought about that with the specific feeling of a person who is noticing things being kind and finding them sharp tonight, sharper than they usually were, as though all her senses had been recalibrated by the events of the evening. She went to her room, she sat on the bed, she pressed her hands flat on her knees. She did not manage anything tonight. She did not organize her thoughts into something neat and storable. She simply sat with the full, complicated, frightening, opening thing that was happening inside her, and she let it be exactly what it was, and she did not press it back or contain it or name it something smaller. It was a long time before she slept. When she did not dream of corridors. She dreamed of wide, open space with no walls in any direction, and herself standing at the center of it, not mapping, not measuring, not preparing for anything. Just standing. Just being there. The supplementary registration was filed at 9 in the morning. Her father signed it at the table in the Summit office, a small room on the administrative wing that smelled of paper and warm radiator air. Mara sat across the table. Celeste was next to her, which was not required, and which Celeste had insisted on anyway, arriving at the service quarters door at 8:30 with the purposeful footsteps of someone who had made a decision in the night, and was carrying it out before the morning could change anything. "I'm coming with you," Celeste had said from the door. Mara had not argued. Her mother had not come. Mara did not press that, because her mother's absence was a complicated thing that was going to take time to understand, and time was something she had decided, in the long sleepless portion of the previous night, to allow. She had spent 3 years wanting everything resolved quickly and cleanly, managed down to a size that could fit inside the East Wing. She was done with that particular ambition. The registrar, a formal man whose voice had the efficient dryness of someone who had processed a great number of administrative tasks and found each one equally procedural, walked through the paperwork with the same energy he would have applied to any other form. He asked her full name, her age, her pack standing. He asked about her designation, which was a formal Summit requirement, and which she answered without any adjustment in her voice, because she had been working on that, on saying the things that were true about herself with the same directness she had been finding in everything else. When the registration was complete, the man thanked them and asked them to remain available for a supplementary verification session in the afternoon, which Caius had apparently arranged, and which would serve as her formal introduction into the Summit proceedings, even though the presentations had already concluded. Her father stood when the meeting was done. He was quiet as they left the room. In the corridor, Celeste took her arm naturally and they walked together, the three of them, back toward the main wing. At the junction where the corridor split, her father stopped. "Mara," he said. She stopped. Celeste's arm stayed in hers. "I want to say something properly," her father said, "not managed. I've been doing the managed version for 3 years and it hasn't served either of us." He stopped. She could hear him organizing his words with the care of someone who is not a naturally unguarded speaker and is making himself be one. "When you got sick, when it happened, I was frightened. I was frightened in a way I didn't know how to be, because I had spent my whole life in a world where problems could be addressed and managed and solved, and this was a thing that couldn't be solved, and I did not have the capacity to be present in it with you. So I arranged it instead. I made arrangements, and the arrangements became the shape of the thing instead of actually," he stopped again, "instead of actually staying with you in it." The corridor was quiet. Celeste's arm tightened slightly in hers. "I know," Mara said. "I know you know," he said, "but I needed to say it." A pause. "I am sorry for it, I am genuinely sorry, and I would like, if you're willing, to do differently from here." She held the words. She held them carefully, the way she had learned to hold things that mattered without squeezing them or setting them down immediately. "I'm willing," she said. "I want that too." Her father breathed, one long exhale, the kind that carries something out with it. "Good," he said, "good." They went their separate ways in the corridor, her parents toward the formal wing, She and Celeste toured the open area near the East Gallery where a small sitting room was available for family use. She had not planned to go to the sitting room. Celeste navigated her there without being asked. They sat together for 20 minutes in the quiet, and Celeste talked not about anything important, just talked. The way she used to talk when they were young, a steady, easy flow of observations and small complaints, and the particular kind of conversation that has no purpose except to fill a comfortable space with sound so that neither person has to sit in it alone. Mara listened and responded and let it be exactly what it was, which was her sister choosing, in her own specific way, to stay alongside her. At 11, she went back to the service quarters. Bet was there and Cole and Harriet, and the morning was already well underway. She helped with the kitchen preparation and she ate breakfast with them, and she told them, when they asked, that the meeting had gone well, that things had changed, that she was going to be in a different position for the afternoon. Cole said that was good in his careful, unhurried way. Harriet said about time, without looking up from what she was doing, and then said nothing else because nothing else was needed. Bet looked at her for a moment, the long look that Bet used when she was seeing something she had been waiting for, and said, "You look different." "Do I?" "Yes," Bet said, "good different." She went back to the stove. "Eat something else, you need it." Mara ate something else. The afternoon session was at 3. It was not a ceremony. It was not presented as a ceremony, and Caius had been specific in the paperwork that it was not to be framed as one. It was a verification meeting, a formal acknowledgement of a supplementary registration, which required the Alpha King's attendance and signature along with her own and her father's. Beyond that, it was a meeting in a room with people in it. That was all. She dressed again in the dark green dress because she had not brought another formal option, and she was not going to wear something that didn't suit the occasion. She put her hair up with the same 12-minute precision and checked it by touch and found it correct. She put on the good shoes. She stood in the small service room for a moment before leaving. She thought about what she was walking into. A room full of people who had been conducting a formal summit for 3 days without her. People who knew the presentations, the register, the social choreography of the whole event. People who were going to look at a supplementary registration and wonder why it had been necessary, who had made it necessary, what the story was. She thought about those people and what they would think. She thought about this for approximately 60 seconds. Then she picked up her cane, a slim, adjustable one she carried for spaces she hadn't mapped, which she had not used once since arriving because she had not needed it in any space she had fully learned, and she went. She used the cane in the formal corridor because the afternoon's traffic had changed the corridor's density, and she was coming in from a different entry point than her usual ones. She adjusted her map as she moved, adding detail, and she arrived at the meeting room door with a precise count of 32 steps from the junction and a clear mental image of the layout. Cole had come with her to the door, not because she had asked him to, because he had appeared at her side in the kitchen hallway and said, with his careful, quiet steadiness, that he was going that direction anyway, which was probably not true but which she accepted in the spirit it was offered. "This is you," he said at the door. "Thank you," she said. "You'll be completely," he stopped. She heard him rethink. "You've been completely fine every day," he said. "This isn't different." She smiled. She turned toward the door. She went in. The room had perhaps 30 people in it. She knew the number within 5 seconds, the acoustic measure, the distribution of breathing and small movements, the particular density of a formal room that has arranged itself in rows. She moved to the front left, where her father's voice had come from when he said her name quietly in acknowledgement. She found the seat. She sat. Around her, the room had the quiet, slightly held quality of people who were watching something happen, and had not yet decided what it was. Caius was at the front. She found him by the same means she always found him, the particular quality of his presence, which she was becoming familiar with in a specific, honest way that she was no longer pretending to herself about. The formal verification was brief, less than 10 minutes. Papers signed, acknowledgments given, the formality of the thing compressed to its essential structure because the point was not the ceremony but the record. When it was done, the official leading the session made a statement that Mara Arden of Pac Arden had been formally registered as a summit participant, and that her inclusion in the candidate register was official and binding. The room absorbed this with the specific silence of people who will have opinions about it later, in conversations she will not be present for, in the way that things discussed elsewhere always shape the world in which you are present. She knew this was happening. She did not require approval from those conversations. She had made her peace with that in the sleepless hours the previous night, with the same honesty she had been applying to everything. After the formal portion ended, there was a brief social period, the custom that followed official meetings in formal contexts, people moving, conversation resuming. She navigated it as she navigated everything with her map and her precision, giving nothing away that she did not choose to give. Two things happened in the social portion that she stored carefully. The first was that a woman she didn't know, from a sound her voice came from, approached and introduced herself as from the Whitmore pack, and asked how long she had been learning navigational techniques, and the question had no performance of concern in it. It was a direct, interested question, the kind that assumed competence rather than its absence. Mara answered it directly and found, with something close to surprise, that the conversation moved naturally and quickly into something genuine, the kind of conversation that exists when two people are actually talking to each other. The second thing was simpler. She was standing near the back of the room when she felt the familiar shift in the room's texture, the reorientation of the space that meant he had moved, and then he was beside her, and the room's social noise was around them, and his voice was low and for her. "All right," he said. "Yes," she said. "The Whitmore woman," he said. "She runs her pack's diplomatic training programs. She's good. She asks good questions," Mara said. "So I've heard," he said. A pause that was comfortable, not the pauses of two people trying to fill silence, the pause of two people who are in the same space without needing to fill it. "I spoke with your father this morning," he said, "before the registration." She had not known this. "What did you say to him?" "Several things," a pause. "Among them that the capacity of a person to navigate a space they cannot see is an asset, not a limitation. That the instinct to manage that capacity instead of trust, it is a fear response, not a protective one. That I have rarely seen an asset managed so badly by people who thought they were doing the opposite." She absorbed this. "How did he respond?" "He agreed," Kaya said, "more readily than I expected." "He agreed last night too," she said. "I think it's been sitting with him longer than any of us knew. The knowing that something was wrong but not having the shape of it clearly enough to name it." "People often know before they say," he said. "Yes." They stood together in the social noise. The meeting room continued around them. She thought about what her father had said in the corridor, the careful, difficult honesty of it, the thing he had made himself say without the managed version covering it. She thought about what it took for a man who had been managing things for decades to set the management down for 60 seconds and say the true thing instead. She thought about how she had done the same thing, for the first time in 3 years, the previous day in a corridor with a man who had asked her a direct question. "What happens after the summit ends?" she said. "It ends in 2 days," he said. "After that, a formal process, communication between my staff and your family, meetings arranged properly. The opportunity to know each other better with appropriate structure around it. And if I decide through that process that the answer is no." A pause, not a surprised one, the pause of a person who has already thought about this. "Then you decide no," he said, "and the process closes, and you go home as Mara Arden, who attended the summit officially and whose registration is on record, which is what it should have been from the start." "No consequences," she said. "No consequences." She thought about this. She thought about the shape of what he was offering, and the shape of what he was not offering, and how different those two shapes were from what she had expected 3 days ago, when she had been standing in the kitchen organizing things that did not need organizing, while Celeste prepared for a world Mara had been told was not hers. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "When did you decide? Was it the first day in the corridor or the second?" A pause, a genuine one. "The first," he said. "The second confirmed it." She nodded slowly. "What did the first day tell you?" "That you were not where you were supposed to be," he said. "In every sense, not the East Corridor, not the service role. Not the small space someone had built around you and told you was appropriate." He paused. "It told me that the world had made a mistake about you and you had learned to live inside the mistake, but you had never quite believed it was true, that you were still pressing against it." She thought about the restless thing under her ribs, the one she had been managing for 3 years. "How could you tell?" she said. "Because you carry a tray with the same precision as someone who has made peace with their situation," he said. "But you listen to rooms with the attention of someone who has not yet given up on them." The room moved around her. The social noise continued. Someone laughed on the other side of the space, a genuine laugh, the kind that carries without trying to. She felt, with the quiet honesty she had been practicing, the thing that had been pressing against 3 years of managed smallness, and she gave it its correct name. It was hope. Not the reckless kind, not the kind that promised everything and forgave nothing. The careful kind, the earned kind, the kind that comes not from certainty about the future but from the truth of the present moment, the fact that she was here officially registered, standing in a room that her name was now on record as belonging to, speaking with a person who had seen the mistake the world had made about her and had decided to do something about it. She breathed it in. "I'm going to go find Bet," she said, "and tell her what happened today. And then I'm going to sleep for about 11 hours. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "That sounds like exactly the right plan." "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he agreed. She moved through the room with her cane, which she no longer needed for this space because she had mapped it fully in the first 10 minutes, but which she carried because it was hers, and because she was done pretending she didn't use it. She reached the door. She went through it. In the corridor, which she knew by heart, she let herself walk at her own pace, her own rhythm, without adjusting for anyone's comfort or anyone's expectation. For the first time in 3 years, she was exactly where her name said she should be. She was going to need time with that. She had time. The world had just given it back to her. The summit ended on a Thursday. Mara knew it was Thursday because Cole told her when he brought tea to the kitchen at 7 in the morning and said, "Last day," in the specific tone of someone noting a fact that carries more weight than facts usually do. She had been there for 5 days. She had arrived as a person who carried trays and stayed to the service corridors. She was leaving on a different register than the one she had arrived on. She packed her bag in the small north-facing room. She did it with the same systematic order she always used, working from the items she had used most recently back to the ones she had packed first, returning everything to its place with the precise attention of someone who understood that order was not a limit but a choice, a way of engaging with the physical world on her own terms rather than the world's. Bet knocked on the open door. "We're doing tea," she said. "I'll be there," Mara said. She finished packing. She checked the room thoroughly, running her hands across every surface, the windowsill, the chair, the table. She left nothing behind. She always left nothing behind. In the kitchen, Cole and Harriet were already at the table. The last morning tea of the summit, which had become its own small tradition in the service quarters, not because anyone had decided it would be, but because it had happened each morning by the natural gravity of people who had found each other's company restful. Harriet said, "Are you coming back to the next summit?" "In 4 years," Mara said. "I don't know yet." "Different context in 4 years," Harriet said, with the particular tone of someone who knew more than they were saying and had decided to say it simply. Mara smiled. Cole was quieter than usual. She noticed it the way she noticed everything, through the absence of his careful, measured comments, through a quality in his breathing that was slightly tighter than it usually was in the kitchen. "Cole," she said. He said. "Are you all right?" A pause. "I'm fine," he said, then very quietly, "I think it was good that you were here." He said it with the care he gave all his words, the slightly more careful pace that he used when he wanted to make sure the sentence came out correctly. "I just wanted to say that." She held the tea in both hands. "Thank you," she said, "for the directions and for the quiet." He made a small sound of acknowledgement. She could hear in it that he understood she meant both things, the practical directions he had given, and the particular quality of his company, which had been helpful in the way that only very quiet people can be helpful, without requiring anything from her in return. The tea continued, the morning moved. At 8:30 she heard her family assembling in the main entrance hall, the familiar weight of her father's footsteps, her mother's controlled efficiency, Celeste's quick-paired heels. She said goodbye to Bet, who accepted it with the simple directness of someone who knows a goodbye is not an ending. "I'll see you when we're home," Mara said. "Yes," Bet said. She did not say anything else. She never said anything else when the thing that needed to be said had already been said. Mara went to the main entrance hall. Her family was there, and Caius was there. She had not expected that. She had not been told he would be. She located him by the specific orientation of the room, the way everyone in the space adjusted slightly in relation to his position, the particular quality of attention that gathered around him whenever he entered a room, and she understood that his being here now on the last morning was a deliberate thing. "Your Majesty," her father said. "Mr. Arden," Caius said, and then her mother's name and Celeste's, and then Mara. "Good morning," she said. He moved toward her, and the room made space as it always did, and he stopped at the distance that was his usual distance, close enough that she did not have to raise her voice, far enough that the space between them was respectful and chosen. "Safe travels," he said. "Thank you," she said. A pause. Around them, her family was present, and the summit staff were handling the logistics of departure, and the entrance hall had its usual end-of-event quality, the particular organized movement of many people preparing to leave a shared space in different directions. "The first meeting," he said quietly, "can be in 6 weeks. My staff will be in contact." 6 weeks, she said. "If that works." "It works," she said. Another pause. She could feel the texture of it, not uncomfortable but full, the way pauses get when there is more in them than either person is going to say out loud right now, in this hall with these people. "I'm going to be honest with you," he said. He said it even more quietly, still not a whisper, just low and directed. "I've been thinking about the right thing to say, for the last morning of this week, and I've kept arriving at the same thing, which is that everything I want to say I should say in 6 weeks in the right setting properly, so I'm going to leave most of it." She appreciated this. She had been preparing for something she might not have known how to receive. "Then say the part that won't wait," she said. A pause. "I'm glad you came," he said, "not just to the reception, to the summit, in whatever arrangement, whatever capacity, I'm glad you were here." She breathed. "So am I," she said. They stood for a moment in the shared knowledge of that. Then the practical world resumed. Her father was saying something about the cars, Celeste was beside her, and the morning was proceeding with all the necessary logistical efficiency of departure, and Mara allowed herself to be moved along with it. In the car, riding home through the 4-hour landscape she mapped by sound and air and the hum of the road shifting beneath them, she sat with the window close to her shoulder and the world moving past the glass, and she let herself think. Not about 6 weeks, not about what would be said there, what would be decided, what the formal process would look like. She let that sit at its distance for now. What she thought about instead was the 5 days themselves, the shape of them, the particular things that had happened in them, the way each day had asked something of her and she had given it. She thought about the East Gallery corridor and a tray that she had caught before she had caught her footing. She thought about 30 seconds of corridor conversation and the weight of the word yes in her own mouth. She thought about a service alcove and the sound of a ceremony happening on the other side of a wall, and the specific quality of wanting something you have told yourself you are not allowed to want. She thought about a reception hall and the dark green dress and her mother's voice, and the way 3 words, "I'm glad you came," had taken up a space in the room that could not be taken back. She thought about the night in the small room with the north-facing window, and how she had lain there with all of it, not managing it, just holding it, just letting it be as large as it actually was. She thought about all of it, and she did not reduce it or arrange it or compress it into something that would fit back inside the East Wing, because she was not going back to the East Wing. Her father had said so, she had said so. And she had learned in 5 days that the things she said clearly and directly, and without the managed version covering them, had a different kind of staying power than the things she had been saying before. Celeste fell asleep against the window beside her. Mara could hear the change in her breathing, the slow, regular fall of someone who had spent 5 days performing and was now, in the private space of the car, releasing the performance. Her father spoke once in the 2nd hour to ask if she needed to stop. She said she was fine. He did not say anything else for a while. Then, very quietly, and she understood the quietness was intentional, that it was not meant to carry to Celeste or her mother in the front of the car but to reach only her. "I'm proud of you." "I wanted to say that." She held the words. "I know," she said. "I needed to do it anyway." "Yes," he said, "I know, but I'm still proud." She turned her face back toward the window she could not see through, and she breathed, and she let that sit too, the complicated, multi-layered thing that was her father saying he was proud, which she did not need in order to know that she had done the right thing, but which was not nothing, either, which was one of those truths that existed in the complicated human space between needing something and caring about it anyway. She was going home. The home she was going home to was different from the one she had left, not because the house had changed, but because she had. The East Wing was simply the East Wing now, rooms, not a sentence. Her father had signed a document. Her name was on an official register. Caius was going to call his staff in the morning and they were going to begin arranging a meeting. In 6 weeks she was going to sit across from him in a proper setting and have a conversation that was not contained within the borrowed time of a corridor, and whatever was said in that conversation was going to be said fully and without management, and she was going to say it with the same directness she had been practicing all week. She was afraid of that. She had told him she was afraid of it. He had said that made sense. She held the fear the same way she was holding everything else, without compressing it, without reducing it to something more manageable than it actually was. It was the size it was. She was big enough for it. She had not always known that about herself. She knew it now. The drive went on. The road changed under them, the smooth surface of the central territory giving way to something rougher as they got closer to home, the familiar sound of the specific stretch of road that was 6 minutes from the house. She had known that sound for years, had always known it was the announcement of arrival, home in 6 minutes, recognized the road by its sound. She recognized it now and she thought, I am going home, and the home I am going to is not the same place I left, and I am not the same person I was when I left it, and that is exactly right, that is exactly how it should be. She pressed her hand to the window glass. The glass was cool and solid and real. 6 minutes. She counted them. At the door of the house, her mother touched her arm. Not the managed touch, not the careful kind that her mother had used for 3 years, the touch that contained its own apology and its own distance. Just a hand on her arm, brief and real and direct, the way you touch someone you know and are relieved to be standing next to. Mara did not say anything. She put her hand over her mother's for a moment. That was all. They went inside. Bet, who had arrived ahead of them by a faster route in the second car, had already put the kettle on. Mara could hear it from the entrance hall. She could smell the familiar smell of the house, specific and complete and entirely itself, the smell of a place that had contained her for 3 years in a space that was too small, but which had also contained everything she had needed to build the things she had brought with her to the summit and back. She set her bag down at the bottom of the stairs. She stood in the entrance hall of the house she had grown up in. She did not go to the East Wing. She went to the sitting room. She sat in the chair by the window that faced south, not the window she had been given. The window she preferred, the one she had not sat at because it was in the main part of the house, and she had taught herself to prefer the East Wing because it was the space she was permitted. She sat in the south-facing chair and she felt the afternoon light on her face, and the light was warm and real even though she could not see it, because the things she could not see were still real, had always been real, had never been less real than the things she could see. That was a truth she had always known, and which other people had occasionally forgotten. She was not going to allow them to forget it again. Cole had said she was completely fine. He had meant it as reassurance, and she had taken it as such, and she thought about it now differently, not as reassurance but as a simple, accurate observation. She had been completely fine. Through 5 days of a world that had been organizing itself around the assumption that she was not, she had been completely fine. She was going to be completely fine going forward as well. She was also going to be afraid sometimes, and want things that felt very far away, and have days when the distance between where she was and where she wanted to be felt enormous. Those things were true too. She was going to hold all of it, the fine and the afraid and the wanting, with the same honest attention she had been practicing. She breathed in the south-facing room. Bet appeared in the doorway. "Tea," she said. "Please," Mara said. Bet went back to the kitchen. The house moved around her with its familiar sounds, its specific rhythm, the clock on the mantel and the pipes in the walls, and the particular way the wind came through the south window differently from how it came through the east. She had 6 weeks. She was going to spend them well. Not managing, not waiting, not pressing herself into the corners of the available space and calling it appropriate. Living in it, fully, with both hands, the way she had always been built to do and which she was, at 20 years of age, only just beginning to understand she was allowed. She sat in the chair. She let the light fall on her face. She was entirely there.